Oh yeah, the ones I was
Um,
like casting hex on to try and get
Yeah.
the hang of hex.
awesome. Oh my gosh, right? Great. Okay. Well, thanks, you guys. Yeah. So I did want to take an opportunity to just like do a check in and share some thoughts that I have had and see how everyone's doing with the game, etc. So I had a good conversation with Kara. She emailed me that she wasn't going to be able to make it. She's traveling, I think. But I had a good conversation with her a couple of weeks ago and talked about some of these things at that time. So um, I thought it was worthwhile to kind of share, with the whole crew, as it were. Um, so a couple of things that I have realized of myself as a DM. One is that I have always assumed that things that happen off camera, if you don't tell me otherwise, I assume that I have authorial control over that for the most part. So if there are things that you want to be true for what's happened to your character in the past or that sort of thing, definitely let me know. And obviously, this Kara and I had this conversation with regards to the Tabaxi, that like all the Tabaxi are enslaved. That wasn't like a thing that she participated in that decision making. I was just like, oh yeah, like this is a thing that happened off camera, and so that's how it is. But obviously, that might affect what happens on camera. So I try to be sensitive to that. I also think that it's worthwhile. Like, I think it's also fun as a player, and this may not be where your fun is, right? So, like, part of my point of having this conversation is to like align our funds, right? So, like, part of my fun as a player is being thrown like, you get this thing from the DM. It's like, okay, well, I got this ball. I got to do something with it now. It may not be the ball that I wanted, but I'm going to roll with it. So I guess my first thought is like, what's everyone's like initial reaction to that thought or statement?
Yeah. I mean, I'm always down to be thrown. Like that's why I like having like some kind of a backstory, but leaving things that are like unknown to me to be filled in. Like that's totally chill for me.
Same. And in terms of being thrown into like random shit and having to deal with that, I love that. As long as I have the freedom to be able to do whatever I want to do with whatever the crazy shit is. Like, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, Ben.
So I feel like we're way farther down the path of collaborative storytelling than we were even like 6 months ago, and so that we can keep the collaborative thought in mind, especially with some of that backstory or between story kind of things, because we've had some interesting sessions where, say, a week's gone by and we've done stuff. And so I mentioned this to Eric, but I just wanted to put this in everybody's ear for a minute. I think it would be cool to have a channel on the Discord that's specifically for in character conversation, and maybe character revelation or that sort of collaborative stuff. And so what that could do for us, especially when we have stuff that we're supposed to figure out, that we could do it back and forth in that area. Because as far as like the alignment of fun is concerned, I love the role play and I love the social stuff, and I really like the combat and exploration too. One thing that is a little tough for me is that if because these two games are my gaming for the week. And so if we get really bogged down in the deciding of what it is we're going to do, it just sort of bums me out a little, because it's like, oh well, we could have done any of these other things, but we spent 45 minutes going back and forth on a decision that we ended up going with what we originally thought of. And we can go back and forth forever and ever in the RP channel and not have our 2-hour period. I feel like the 2-hour period we spend in game should be story fun time. And so we've got this resource that I think would be fun to use, so that anytime we sort of want to dig into these characters and sort of play, we can, and we're not bound by the time.
I actually feel really strongly completely the opposite, which is that this is the time that I set aside for game, and it's one of the few times where I have like pretty good access to the PC, because I have to share it with other people in the household, and I would be pretty left out of the game if we're doing a lot of between time game and Discord.
Is there
Cool,
a way
thanks.
that we could use that Discord to cut down on some of the like meta discussion?
Yeah, I mean, I would be mostly for that. I just don't want it to be like I don't know. I just really, like, again, this is the time I set aside for game, and I don't want to get totally sidelined either in character or out of character. I mean, we've definitely had meta discussions on Discord for various games.
Sure.
And also, like, I'm a big fan of in-character discussion about these decisions. I kind of hate when we go out of character so that our more rational actors can decide stuff. Like, I like it much better when our, selfish, young, dumb, impetuous kids make the decisions.
That's kind of the thing that I'm pointing towards, because there are points where we step away from the story and sort of stay away from it in a somewhat extended fashion, and so when we have a scene where 5 minutes is supposed to have passed in game time, and it's been like an hour, 15 minutes, and we just haven't done anything, that sort of gives me moderate stress, because it's like, well, there's another couple weeks before we can see this big story move forward.
Could we find some kind of meta mechanism for having those discussions in character? Like maybe each character has their say, and then we proceed with a plan instead of the back and forth that we tend to do?
Like a little round table, we all make our case, and then at the end, that is it. And
let's have a vote that doesn't include like extra persuasive discussion, unless there's a tie. Because I feel like when we vote, we're still discussing as we're voting, and so we call the question, and then it's another 20 minutes before we actually do the vote.
Can you rephrase it? I'm not sure I totally understood.
So the last few times we voted, the RP has continued while we are getting everyone's vote, and I think it has altered the outcome. And so when it's time to vote, I think we should probably just put the vote in the chat and just have that be the or if we want to make it like a secret ballot or something like that, we could put it as a direct message to Eric, and he could tell us what the outcome of the vote is. I mean, just depending on how we want to do it, and it can be slightly different each time, as long as there's a mechanism that's fair. I think we're good.
I liked the role play that accompanied our last vote. I thought it was interesting what everybody wanted
Yeah.
and didn't want.
Well, especially because it followed a tie. Because once
Yeah,
we tied and we had to discuss it again to sort of redirect it, that made total sense. And
But that tie wouldn't have happened without the role play. Like the only reason that tie happened was because Grikiki changed her vote based on what other people were voting.
I think that what I'm hearing is that like there's like a point of diminishing returns in fun, right? Like discuss, and then like more discussion gets no more fun, but like takes more time.
Agreed.
So, I think that it may be worthwhile, and I don't know if we need to come up with a mechanism for this, but maybe just for everyone to be aware of it, and maybe, for people to feel empowered to say, out of character, like, hey, you guys, like, I feel like we've been on this for a while. Can we wrap it up so that we can move the story forward?
Yeah.
And for people to not be upset about that statement, do you think like people would be comfortable with something like that?
I think so, especially now that we have like this understanding that it's not coming. Like if someone just said that without this discussion, I might have been a little miffed. But like with this discussion and that understanding, someone just popped in chat was like, hey, let's keep going, whatever.
Yeah.
Personally, Renee is.
Are we in general agreement that that fun for the group is kind of what we're all about in telling the story? Because I don't think I don't think that's a radical statement.
Yeah.
What is everybody's fun? I mean, just sort of briefly, because I don't think we necessarily know what people like best.
Yeah. Why don't we go? I'll go around my screen. Lizzie, do you want to start? Like what you're like? What's fun for you?
I love smashing stuff in combat. I find that exceptionally fun. It is one of my most favorite things to just totally dominate a monster. I like having gentle. I'm trying to think of the right word. I like having storylines with other characters with like gentle bumps in them. I don't like strongly antagonistic storylines, but I like having meaningful interactions that change like how my character interacts with another character and changes my character. And I like discovering the backstory of the universe. That's very fun for me. So yeah, I guess I like chances to like show what my character is like. I like beating things in combat, and I like forging relationships with other characters.
Awesome. Thanks, Ben.
So I also like smashing things in combat. For me, it's more of the tactical thing. I like small unit tactics, and I came to tabletop games from larger scale war games, and so I enjoy that. I love engaging with NPCs and sort of getting into mischief that way. I like the between character interactions that don't necessarily have anything to do with the larger story. I probably wouldn't want to spend a whole session that way, but I do like that there are these little bits that develop between the characters. And another thing that I like in games is story arcs that that develop and come to resolution, and so they can be short term or longer term. I also like for the stakes to be high a lot of the times, but I always like to feel like that there's something the players can do about it. And so if it's just like a no-win situation that feels frustrating, that can get stressful. And then I also like the I like interacting with strange and unusual places and weird stuff. Probably my favorite sessions we've had so far have been like going after the ship and trying to get through those caves. Yeah, Kobayashi Maru, I will find a way to cheat. I guarantee it.
Awesome.
But yeah, that's sort of where a lot of my fun comes from. And oh yes,
Cool.
oh yes.
All right, great, thanks. Sam?
So I like helping other people smash things in combat. I do really enjoy combat, but I always love to play the utility caster and that kind of stuff. But so helping other people smash things in combat is very fun for me, or like altering the battlefield to facilitate that. I also love like interacting with the other characters on a character level, and like kind of what Lizzie was talking about, like seeing how like my character has changed, like the way my character interacts with other characters has changed, but also seeing like just learning more about the other characters. And like I really love the like kind of, I think what maybe you were referring to, Ben, as like the in-between times, like the like chat over a watch, like while you're on watch together kind of stuff, like that aren't necessarily like directly pertaining to the story, but just like the in-between travel times, like the RP stuff that can happen in those moments. I really enjoy like that kind of stuff. It's fun to like, even when when there's a moment where we could just like, yeah, it's been like X amount of time, but like we can like in the fast forwarding through that time, like hit some like moments in the middle where we like, or just like these are the things that we're talking about in the week's time that passes or whatever, you know, like that kind of stuff I thoroughly enjoy. And the last thing I was gonna say is like I love collectively as a group influencing where the overall story of this that we're telling together goes through our decisions, like having the choices matter, and like being able to influence what's going on through our decisions and actions as a group.
Awesome, thanks. I'm taking all these notes, and as we're doing this, I'm like, probably should have done this a year ago. Okay, well, we're learning now. All right, Will?
I like getting to use my character. You know, speaking as the person who's been doing TTRPG the least amount of time here, before we even started our first session 0, you know, Sam was asking me, you know, have I given any thought to what kind of character I wanted to play? And I didn't know all the ins and outs at the time, but I was in the middle of my big pirate kick that I often get on like once a year or so. And so I wanted to play a pirate. And, you know, as I've gotten more, you know, in depth about all the things that a swashbuckler and a battle master can do, you know, I've discovered a lot of stuff. The most fun that I've ever had in this game is still when we were breaking into the mine on Zanzivis, because not only did I roll a nat 20 on the first shot that I'd gotten to use with my pistol in weeks, but I also got to do an Errol Flynn swing on a rope. But you know, it's not just like in combat situations. You know, I love that rogues have a stupid amount of skills, and I love getting to use those, like acrobatics, like may have cheated by giving myself history, but I'm a history major, goddammit. I wanted history. You know, stuff like that. I love piloting the ship. I love doing that kind of stuff. I just love getting to, and I didn't do a great job putting this character together, again, because I didn't even have the player's handbook when we started. But but I've grown to, so this isn't the best character that I've created so far, but I love getting to use what he can do.
Awesome. Thanks. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Renee?
Okay, so this will come as a surprise to probably nobody, but my favorite part of D&D is the characters. I love the characters. It's like my favorite part. So starting from very internally and then moving externally, starting internally with my own character, I love creating, well, apparently tragic backstories because every single one of my characters has one of those. But when we were creating the characters for this, Sam and I took hours. Like, we talked for days about what we wanted. We threw out all these different kinds of ideas. We knew we wanted our backstories to be linked. And then we could show you those Discord messages. They're long and intense. And I love I don't create like an entire backstory because, like was discussed earlier, I like leaving it very open for the DM and such. Like, Enid maybe being a princess? What? But, maybe? But I like having one central piece that Renee as a player can go back to time and time again and use that as like a source for a lot of the decision making of my character and stuff. And then having that backstory and having it be kind of a big thing with me, and then slowly leaving like little hints here and there, like how, oh, Enid wears the gloves every time. She's doing that for a reason, not just a fashion statement. Like, she's doing it because she's freaking ice cold to the touch. Like, Rukiki found out first, because she doesn't have a heartbeat, and she's hiding the horrible scars that both of her and Aegis have. And like slowly having those revelations come to life until the big reveal of the backstory. That is always one of my favorite parts, is when the backstory of my character is fully realized. Like when it happened for Enid and Aegis, essentially, when that is revealed, like, I love talking about it and being able to tell you guys, be like, look, I made this, please look at it, let's talk about it, I really love it, I want to share it, etc. And I love that. So that's very internally, in that regard. Externally, I love doing that with everyone else's characters as well, whatever they may be. Like, it could be like mine, where they make like one specific event and that's the event, and maybe like a few others to help lead to the event, but then everything else is blank. It could be like how Ben was saying, where he has like almost no backstory, and then discovering what backstory he has with Ben and those characters as well. Or maybe if someone's more intense than I am and has created like that character's whole autobiography and slowly learning about them. Like, I just love learning about the other characters and what makes them ticks and why they are the way that they are, if that makes sense. So I love, like, combat is great. I love combat. Like, combat is fun. Renee doesn't care about it. I'll do it because that's part of the game and other people love it. So like, and I'll have fun the whole time. Especially if like during combat you get to like throw out those like one-liners that help make your characters develop a little bit more as well. So I really like seeing how those the backstories reveal. My backstory gets to be told and stuff. In my head every time I'm like, come on, keep asking about the scars in the lightning cannon. I'm ready to talk about it. Like, I'm ready to go. So that's internally and externally, but then between them, I don't have a fun word for that, but in between the characters as well, I love interacting as my character with all the other characters, with all of your characters as well. And like Sam was saying, those downtime moments, those little moments, those tiny little discussions, I'm in love with those. My favorite, hands down, my like top 5 D&D moments are all those moments. Like, they all stem from some of those moments, and like just across all the D&D games. Like, there's hardly any moments I don't like in D&D, gotta be honest, but like my top ones are always those, like when Mogmoth and Frida had their conversation because I was like, I'm taking watch with Mogmoth because I'm gonna have a conversation with him, and then we did. I loved that. That is one of my favorite moments in that campaign so far, because that was amazing, and just seeing how, being around this person every single day is obviously going to influence how I act. So it's hard for me, like, in my mind as Renee, I know being around Grakiki, who is super duper supportive, and Kita, who is always about the best in the for the world and all that. I know logically that would influence Enid a little bit and help her like come out of her shell a little bit, but I have a hard time acting further out of the shell for Enid because we have like there hasn't been like I know that there's all the downtime, but the way my brain works, I guess, is like if we don't have like a little sprinkling of those in games, it's going to be irrelevant to me. If that makes sense. I like have not totally irrelevant, of course, because we have 2 hours and that makes it impossible, but like just a little bit. I love those moments influencing each other, growing with each other. Because to me, in the end, D&D is a study of the human condition in various world situations that the universe throws at you. And I think that's a really interesting study that I enjoy being a part of and working with others to be a part of that as well. And I'm going to stop my long wind, because that was a really long wind, and leave it there.
Awesome, thanks. And Mary Catherine? You are unmuted, but we cannot hear you. Or I cannot hear you.
Yeah, I can't hear her either.
Nope, still cannot.
I saw your mic activate. The little like ring popped up around you, but
Nope.
no.
Aw.
Can you type it in chat?
I mean, it sounds every now and then it seems like it's coming through, but like Sam said, the ring sometimes appeared.
Very odd.
While she tinkers, could I give a commercial for my little mini campaign?
Sure.
Okay, so most of the people in this group had given at least general interest, and so I'm going to go back over the Discord and see just who that is. But the idea of this is it will be an episodic campaign, and so it'll only pop up every now and again, and each episode will be maybe 2-3 sessions long, and so it can be played a couple of times, and then away for a while. So because I know we'll have a more regular game by then. But the idea is that you will roll up 2 characters. One basic normie who gets 2 10 attributes, 2 9 attributes, and 2 11 attributes, and they are slaves of this cult in this gigantic monolith, and they don't know why they're there, and they've been there for a long, long time, and so this is the opportunity for them to break out. And the other character you're going to create is a personified virtue, like a timeless hero that is called in times of great peril, and basically there'll be different aspects of good personified. And so since in the sphere there's no there aren't gods or that kind of thing, it'll be a channel virtue instead of a channel divinity. So clerics and paladins are okay just within this very specific area, but I've got a lot of ideas for the breakout period, and then the individual sessions you would be, or the episodes before any given one, you'd be able to choose from 2 or 3. And so I'd tell you what kind of story it'd be, like a puzzle heavy chapter, and the potential rewards are X, and so that you have a couple of different pathways to go. And so this first time through, once Pi Squared's done, it'll be a 5-6 session arc, and then it will go into the sort of planning catch as catch can. Let's schedule 2 sessions and have another chapter or this or that, so that it can be something that's a part of the experience, but not something we have to set aside a couple years to do. And just for full disclosure, it will be the first time I have run longer than a session at a time in any different world. And so anyone who plays, I will be pumping for how did this work? How did that work? And so just sort of a collaborative growth process and all of that. So.
Cool. Thanks, Ben. Mary Catherine, any success? Doesn't seem like it. All right, that's fine. Yeah, so my fun, if I were a player, I would align pretty closely with Renee. As a DM, my fun honestly comes from laughing. Like when I am laughing, I am like, that is the best game. I just rewatched, some of the games, and I was just cracking up. I'm like, that is where my fun comes 100%. Yeah, you guys are absolutely geniuses. So that's where my fun comes from. But it is really interesting. So like a note that I'm taking for myself is like leave space for those quiet times, and maybe engineer some of those into the game as well, in a not in a forced way, but I think there are ways that we can make them in the game that makes sense. So I think that's something that I can definitely take and run with. Okay, and then let's see. So, the central focus. So, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Matt Colville. He's a idiot who types things on the YouTubes, and he's a DM, and he has like fantastic things to share about DMing. And one of his ideas is that he wants there to be like a central focus for a campaign. And I never really bought into that, and so I've been thinking about it more and more. And I think that for White Star, the central focus is freedom and autonomy, and of course the counterbalance of that is slavery and control and that sort of thing. And it's actually built into the bones of the meta plots that I had from the beginning. I just hadn't like realized it. So I guess I just wanted to share that with you all, that's kind of where my head is at. In terms of like the central conflict, that it's really about like people that want to be free and people that want to control others, is kind of where I'm trending on things. And then the other thing that I want to share, I don't know how much you want to know about how much the sausage is made, and I don't want to share too much, but I do want to tell you, like, I don't do a lot of detailed prep for this, so I could share you some of my game notes. This is a pretty typical one for game 15. I kind of scope out like some basic, encounters and some characters potentially. And that's kind of it. There's another one here. Let's see, session 17, a little bit of background info, some kind of events that might happen, some like neat little details that might occur. But you can see that a lot of these are just a single page per session. So that is to say that like I do have kind of an arcing meta plot, but most of this shit we're coming up with together as we go, So like when we started the game, I had no idea that Tabaxi were all going to be enslaved. But as we progressed, I was like, now what makes sense? Like, why aren't there any Tabaxi? And then like I wove it into the meta plot in a way that made sense for me, and then that kind of manifestation came out. So, and then my Google Doc, for the White Star setting, I've got a variety of notes about characters and important arcs, and important settings and set pieces. I keep track of the sendings and the vignettes. but that's pretty much it. So I don't have a lot of this stuff written down. Like the vast majority, I just improv as we go. So what I want you to take from that is, if there's something that you don't like, I apologize for that ahead of time. I probably was not planning it. It probably is something that developed organically, like during the game or as I was thinking about it. I spend a lot of time when I'm walking to work just kind of thinking about the game, but don't necessarily spend a lot of time writing things down because I don't want to create too much of a box, right? But I also realize that sometimes creates a problem, right? Like that if there's not enough structure, that you don't necessarily know, kind of where to go or what to do with that. So that's a little bit how the sausage is made. Any questions, thoughts, comments to share about any of that?
You are so organized, and it is very impressive. just as a wow, that was really impressive. That's amazing. Your Google Drive is chef's kiss, beautiful.
That's really hilarious because from my point of view, it's like scattered like all over the place.
No, it looks beautiful. I've never run anything longer than a one shot. Usually, what happens is I write down on a couple pieces of paper things, and then I usually forget to bring it to sessions.
Also, I have to say, I do love the tying in of all the games. I don't know if that was like something you were always planning on doing.
Genius.
But I love that.
Yeah.
Even if it's just small bits, like small little like winks and nods, like that's super fun.
Yeah, thanks. I forgot to mention that was something that I did want to bring up is I like doors and I like Stephen King. And so if you know anything about Stephen King, like a lot of his books like have just little nods to each other throughout. And I've read a lot of Stephen King at this point. So I am a big fan of those like interconnectedness, and I love doors. I just fucking love doors.
I'm a huge Dark Tower fan, so like all the interconnectedness and windows between the games has been one of my favorite parts. And I've been
really
very
cool.
impressed with how successfully you've pulled it off.
Oh, thanks.
Back on that series, I've only read The Gunslinger.
Well, and I enjoy that we all seem to care about that kind of stuff. I mentioned in the chat that the responses to Maximilian having Bellerin clones, and then the responses in game to the Epiox session I popped into where I was playing the clone who has issues. That kind of stuff is so much fun, and stuff that has that longer range effect, like knowing that we're burning Mr. Smith's spell slots, and that we did some damage to some legit powers later on was big fun.
Yeah,
that's actually.
Oh, good.
I was gonna say that's actually like a very, very good point spin with the Tosserin reveal. That is like primo example of what I was talking about, of loving the reveals and the learning about the other characters that I was talking about. I loved like how he loved the reaction. I loved that feeling of holy shit, oh my god, and then seeing everyone else go through all of that too. And I cannot wait for when our characters figure it out as well, so we can discuss that in character. Cause like, I cannot wait. Is all like that sort of thing is what I live for. I suppose it's like that.
Sidebar from that, Renee. I fucking love playing villains. I was so happy to be part of that.
You got the good voice for it.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
That just
what I was gonna say a second ago is that like I enjoy those sort of like winks and nods at the other campaigns are the kind of things that are like super fun as players. Like even if they mean nothing to the characters, it's fun. Like it's like a meta fun for the players. Like I'm thinking especially, I think I may have even said this before, but like when in Pi Squared we got the small window into the White Star game, and like that meant absolutely nothing to our Pi Squared characters. They're like, all right, but like all of us as players were like that, like, oh no, reveal, because like we got the window into Ambrose Hill, like spying on us as we like tossed the big crystal ball Eladrin lady off the side of the ship. Like that was the moment we saw it. And we were when you described, Eric, the big sphere going over the side of the ship, that was the moment where I was like, that's absolutely us. And that, like, oh man, like that sort of reveal, like, is, like I said, even though that means nothing for the characters, is super fun as players.
Well, we haven't talked about vignettes at all, but the vignettes we've done, I think, have been super fun. And I'm a lore junkie in any game I ever play, and so I feel like the vignettes are good opportunities to either learn a little lore or to set up the stakes for something. Why is this important? And so the players may know why it's important, but the characters don't. And I think we've all been pretty good about not letting meta knowledge jump into the game, which I think is important.
Yeah, and I'm a fighting game fan, have been my entire life, and one of the reasons I am is because they give you so many different characters to play with, and the vignettes appeal to that part of what I have fun with gaming.
Yeah, I love that. It's like in a movie, like the reveal of like the bad guy hiding around the corner that the protagonist doesn't know about. Like we get to see, like we as players get that like look into a perspective that our characters don't know, but it's super fun to get to like see some of the backstory or things happening other places. Yeah, I do really love the vignettes.
And the fact that we have all of this in a place that we can look at it and enjoy it is fun.
That's
like
very true.
Being able to revisit some of those moments has been really exciting, because I don't know about you, but any of you that write fiction or anything like that will sometimes look at stuff you wrote from a long time back, and there's this sense that I wrote that? I do not recall writing this. And so some of the moments I don't recall storing out until I was like, oh yeah, and then we did this, and this. And in a couple of cases, I'm like, oh, I didn't catch that the first time around. And so I have found that I don't care at all if anybody sees our videos, but I love that we have them there for us.
I have this theory: all nerds want continuity.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
I love it.
Awesome. Thanks, you guys. That's good for me to think about. Yeah, the idea of you all being lore junkies is actually really interesting, and might be fun to continue to explore. And then the last thing that I wanted to touch on, that I wanted to make sure you all understood what's going on for me, is that I tend to err on the side of verisimilitude rather than fun, I suppose. Like verisimilitude is the fun for me, but I realize that there is sometimes a conflict, right? So like the most obvious example, like when I was talking to Kara, is like with Kita getting abducted, like for me, the verisimilitude there was that like Ambrose is like incredibly ruthless, like would do anything, like kick Azish off the ship, like, you know, these horrible things. And then like the way that Enid phrased the request, like, you know, find me Azish. So for me, the verisimilitude was you just find Azish, right? You don't find Kita. That wasn't part of the deal. As a consequence of that decision of opting for verisimilitude, you know, Kita was out of play, and Kara didn't have as much fun as she could have had for a while. So I guess I'm curious, for you all, like where you fall on those lines, realizing that honestly, from your point of view, the verisimilitude may be invisible, right? Like you may not appreciate the difference between like option A and option B, even though in my head there is a very clear sort of like reason why those things happen. So yeah, I'm very interested to hear what you all have to say on that. Yeah, Renee.
Okay, yeah. So I love the idea of verisimilitude because I mean that really builds the world, and that is how we can really truly get good reactions with our characters. Because if we can just change the world whenever we want, then that means our reactions are going to be whatever we want them to be, rather than true results of being forced into situations. That being said, I do think that there is a line in which case verisimilitude, in my opinion, because that's all this is my opinion, is not as important, where at some points I think that it does need to be sacrificed a little bit, like specifically in terms of when it comes to keeping the world accurate. Verisimilitude plus consent, that's actually a very, very good and concise way to put that. Because like when we only found Ajish instead of Ajish and Kita together, because I was hoping they would be together, but and then it came to that point where it's like, oh shit, now we have to do this or my character is going to die. I honestly and truly wanted everyone to pick Kita instead of, and just kill off my character, because like Sam can tell you, I cried a lot because I felt so horrendously guilty. A few weeks ago, I like broke down in front of Kara, because I felt so bad and like I felt so good. I was like, I'm so sorry. Like, please don't be mad at me. I swear. Like, if you're mad at me, I totally understand and I get it. We can talk about it. But I feel horrible for what's like, I felt terrible. Like the vignette that Enid put where it made it like so like emotional and how she felt bad, that was like 10% of what Renee was feeling. And the whole time we were in the Shadowfell, I just kept feeling like worse and worse, because I could tell she wasn't having, like, she was having fun, because like honestly, no matter what, being here these 2 hours with you, like no matter what happens, being here with these 2 hours, I'm having fun hanging out with you guys and being with you guys. Like, that's the fun. But I could tell that she wasn't fully happy, and so I was like, I just want to die, guys. Just kill off Enid. I made a new character. I was like, I got a new one ready to go for White Star. If it comes down to it, I was like, because I just felt bad. Like, I felt horrible. Because then we went off on like this really like Enid heavy thing. I was like, I can't focus on this right now because I feel guilty about it. So that's a long-winded story to say, like, at a certain point, like, yeah, keep the world going and keep the world great, but everyone here as people to me are more important than the world, if that makes sense. Yeah, I'm gonna leave it there because I'm about to cry again, because I'm an emotional human being.
I think very briefly with stuff like that, I think openness is probably the best way to go, especially if it's something that is affecting the way you're feeling and thinking away from the table. Because if there was even a part of you that was like, you know, it might be fun to play this other character and to give Enid a really dramatic send-off, I would have consented to that in a second. And it wouldn't have even been like that kind of stuff. If somebody is feeling blah about something, there's always a way out of blah. And so and I think this group is focused enough on telling this collaborative story that we're willing to willing to find a solution to that kind of thing if we need to. But I am definitely down with knowing that kind of information if it comes up, because I don't want anybody away from the game to be bummed out about the game. That just seems like the worst to me.
Yeah, Sam.
I have a thought with regard to like the verisimilitude. I would say I tend towards like wanting it to be, you know, like a realistic response to like what we do. But on the other hand, was like what you were saying of like not sure how much we see since we don't know what the necessarily everything is behind the curtain is like for us, like what is realistic is I would say it's like relatively elastic of like given that it's a fantastical world and we don't know everything that's going on, like as long as there's like some plausible explanation, the verisimilitude is like fairly elastic in a setting like this and in a game like this, I would say. So like if things need to be like pulled one way or another in order for everyone to be like enjoying their time at the table, I think we can all like roll with it, even if it's like not the most realistic thing at that particular time.
Cool. Lizzie?
I have like a rambling thought about verisimilitude, that I think it's one of the hardest things to achieve between a DM and players, because we don't know what you think is realistic. Like obviously how you create oh wow, everybody just shifted on my screen. You know, how you perceive the world and what's reasonable or unreasonable or smart or not smart within it, we can only guess at. And so some things that I would think would have big consequences end up not having because it just wasn't on your radar. And then things like Renee's wording of Enid's request from the Raven Queen had big consequences, and it is not always easy as a player to perceive like where your world is going to be very real and where it is going to be more, I don't know, glossed over. And that can be difficult when it comes to things that have consequences.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Thanks. Will?
Well, I was just kind of just now thinking about it in terms of environment, because I mean, it is very realistic that Gyrfalcon would have trouble moving around in the Shadowfell, and even in the ruins back in the desert when we were following the Beholder. But at the same time, you know, it's like when that verisimilitude effectively paralyzes my character, like what's the point of being a human rogue?
Yeah.
So, I mean, like I understand the desire to have it as a way of, you know, world building and establishing consequences, but sometimes I feel like I'm getting the shaft.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that actually, I'm glad that you mentioned the consequences, because that was, if you guys need to go, I don't want to drag this out too long, but I do want to take the opportunity. That I also realized as a DM that I am a super big fan of consequences, to the point where maybe it's not fun. You know what I mean? And so that may need to be, for me, a reflection and balance of, you know, the balance of the verisimilitude and the concept of consequences versus, you know, the fun, but also like crafting a narrative and creating drama, which is tension and resolution. And if there are no consequences, then there can't be tension. So I'm curious if any of you have thoughts to share about that, the kind of consequences piece of it.
I love consequences as long as they don't feel punitive on the DM's part, like you guys were stupid and now guess what?
How do you think that is avoided? I think that's a really good thought.
Gosh, I have no idea. But I enjoy consequences, but to be fair, I have not been very much on the receiving end of them in any of our campaigns. So I'm speaking from a place of like consequence privilege that my character was not taken out of play. So
Well,
got
Finia,
you
I
got
mean,
vegetabled, yeah.
that's true. But I mean, I came to you out of character and was like, I'm kind of done with this character. So, you know.
Yeah, but none of us knew that until much later. And so
That's true.
to the rest of us, that felt like a massive consequence. And
That's fair.
And so a couple of the big dramatic moments, I know for both Bellerin and Owen have been born out of some brief conversations with Eric that manifested in game later. And so so I think even though it doesn't feel like the consequences, I think it goes back to that consent thing. Like you were completely on board with that consequence.
Yeah, Renee?
As someone who has just now realized has been a victim of consequences in every campaign, that would be I actually like I can pull that I'm okay with one, and then the other one I still have like emotional difficulty with. Like with the guilt that I feel about Kita and this whole thing, like that's gonna stay. Like I'm not gonna feel good about that ever. And so that's a difficult one. Like that is an example of the consequence that is difficult for me. But then with the consequences of what happened to Fitz, I know I joke about Fitz a lot. That's fine. She died. Like it's cool. She was trying to do the right and yet but stupid thing, and she died for it. That was okay with me. Like I mean, I was like sad because I've never had a D&D character die before. That was definitely the first time. But like she died through like because of someone, like because of something else, and like I didn't really have a say in it, but that kind of consequence was fine with me, if that makes sense. Like so it's hard to put into words, but like it's hard to tell in the moment when something is going to affect a player versus the character. Like if it affects just the character but doesn't affect the player's emotional state or well-being or mental health, etc., then that's one thing. But if there's a point where it starts leaking over to affect the player as well, like Sarah, okay, so like for those of you who don't know, I was trying to get Sarah to, like, we made a deal with Mialasa. We tried to get Sarah, and then Sarah was like, fuck that, shot her. And then the other two ran away, and I was trying to get her out, and I was like, let's put a fucking stop to this, and it didn't work. And so Mialasa cast Fireball on us all. But Sarah probably felt horrendous about it. For days she messaged me about it, and she thought I was so mad at her. She honestly thought that I would stop talking to her for a little bit, and I was like, Sarah, no, it's totally fine. But like, she was worried that like my character's death would bleed over into like Renee's mental health and emotional well-being, when it didn't. But like that kind of line is hard to see, and so when it kind of bleeds over is when it goes a little too far. Is when, yeah, I went off on a tangent on that one.
No, that's I think the character player consequences divide concept is actually really interesting to think about.
Because like if things like that, like if something happens to Enid, or like with Fitz or with Jade or whatever, or Frida, most of the time I'm okay with it. But like sometimes, like if it bleeds over into their emotional, like Kita, Kara, God, why so many Ks? Like I just feel bad, like I feel guilty. and I just
Also,
want to
Mary-
be like,
Yeah.
I want to put a solve on you, and I know that you're sad, and I want to fix it, but I cannot fix it. It is
Yeah.
unfixable. So,
Mary Catherine has
Mary
said,
Catherine just put something in chat. Yeah.
something that impacts the group or others. Yeah, I wonder if it's the idea of a decision that affects other people rather than you. So like you feel guilty to Kara, Sarah felt guilty to you, you know, like that these people's characters' actions affected the game. I guess, you know, in an ideal world, kind of what Ben said, you know, I would hope that everyone would see this as like opportunities for fun. You know, it's like, oh, this is a challenge, or this is a different thing, or this is something I didn't expect, or whatever. And that may be like a little idealized, but that's kind of, you know, my like pie in the sky vision. Yeah, Lizzie.
I think something I was just now like clarifying for myself was I don't mind consequences to decisions we know we're making. It can be really frustrating to have consequences for decisions we did not know we made. Like, well, you guys never looked. And it's like, well, you know, we frequently don't look and nothing happens. I mean, that's a made up example.
No. That's
like,
actually that actually might be the most useful crystallization of this principle for me. And this is actually really helpful for me to think about as a DM, because I used to be the DM that like I didn't give you anything. Like you just walk into a room. If you don't look in that particular place, you don't get that clue, you know. It was a very like you know, God, what was the text-based thing where you had to like look at this, look at that, look at this,
or something.
Yeah, like Zork. Yeah. So that very much used to be my DMing style, and I've tried to move away from that and embrace the idea that the characters are inhabiting this world, and so they're picking up things that the players would not necessarily pick up. So a tip that I might take away from that, and that I think is actionable, is to make that clear. You know, to like, you know, when Enid's like phrasing that question, be like, okay, so just to be clear, like you're just looking for Azish. And like when, you know, Sarah was going to shoot that, be like, okay, there is this powerful sorceress that is clearly has access to third level spells that is flying away that you are going to shoot. You know, like maybe making those stakes clear, or would that be too artificial? I don't know.
I don't think I would like that personally.
I think you could call for a make a wisdom check. And if it's high enough, then you could say, you know, you might consider this.
The way I think about it is like, if it's something that like, even if it's not readily apparent to one of us, if it's something that's like your character like this would be a thing your character would either know, or like as a character who lives in this world, obviously this thing right here is something that you could assume or know to look for or what have you. Whereas like us inhabiting the modern, you know, real world may not think of. And like just because our character, or because we as players maybe not like didn't think of this thing that would be really obvious to any experienced adventurer. Like obviously we're, you know, competent adventurers who would take certain things into account. If we're like consciously like, yeah, I know that this is like maybe something we should be worried about, but we're choosing to ignore it or gloss over it, or we have this other priority that we're deliberately, you know, not spending time looking for this over here because we're focused on that over there. Like that feels like more of a conscious decision than like walking into a room and like, yeah, exactly. Versus like walking into a room and like, because our window into the experience of what our characters see is only given through what you tell us.
Yep.
We may not
think how how can we make the stakes clear without like what Lizzie was saying, like she doesn't think that would be fun, like for me to make it like
making it
too crystallized.
I mean, I guess it is like very dependent on how you do it. Like if you say to Renee, you know, Fae are strongly bound by specific wording. Is this the specific wording you want to use? Then that I feel like is less leading about what's a like good or bad. I don't know. Because it's hard. If you start giving us like that could end badly, then that makes it feel like if we continue on that path and bad things happen, it might be because you think we've chosen a bad path. that fair?
Yeah, right. Like that there might be like some judgment or something associated with that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The
Yeah, which
other thing
again,
would-
I try not to imbue, although having realized that the theme of the campaign is freedom, I think that there is, for me, a through line there that like that is freedom is a virtue, and that is a therefore a good thing, and not freedom is not a virtue. So I think that I am comfortable now that I have had that revelation, sharing that with you all and saying like this is a virtue. I am going to make a judgment on the basis of this for character actions going forward. But yeah, I see what you're saying, Lizzie, that like other things I try to be pretty impartial to and just be like, whatever you guys want to do.
Yeah, the other thing I was thinking of with regard to like decisions we don't know we're making, and like what you were talking about of your former kind of way of DMing it, where you like nothing was given to you. It's like the idea of like going into a room and like there was a magic item in the box over in the corner, and like, well, you didn't check the box, you didn't see it. And it's like, well, did we see like the presence of a box in the corner would be something that would be maybe relatively obvious, but because we didn't know it was there to ask about it, that kind of stuff is what I'm thinking about. Like obviously in the description of the room, if you only point out one thing, it's going to be like, why is he describing that one thing? So it's, I understand that's hard to balance of like, if you specifically point something out, of course, we're going to like go check it out. But
Well, and
also,
oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, but also the fact that like, if it's not specifically mentioned, we don't know that it exists because you are our window into what our characters see. So that's a really hard, I don't know how to balance that, but
yeah, it is very difficult in a fine line, and everyone, just like how we all have our different fun points of the game, like where we find our enjoyment, everyone's going to have a different place where they themselves like the line. So I really think that it's going to be an impossible task to find our perfect place tonight. But maybe if we go into future games with an agreement and an understanding that we might try a few different things, if something doesn't work, just be honest, no one's feelings are going to be hurt. Say, hey, I didn't like it like that. Maybe next time we can maybe go slightly more this way or that way, where all of us, DM included, like if you decide to say something super like revealing or something, but then you're like, you know what? I didn't like telling them that. Then you could be like, I'm not going to do that again. Or we could be like, I didn't like hearing that. Don't tell me that. Something like that. And because like, I mean, and then on top of that, every situation is also like different. Like we might feel a certain line for like investigation things. We might feel a different line for like combative. Oh, I just hit my desk, everything is shaking. Combative reasons. We might feel like something even different with interacting with other people and NPCs. So like, as we find our different lines and work with each other, maybe we can just find that like little work together and know that we're not trying to insult anyone's personal thoughts of gameplay, because I don't think any of us are or would ever. Yeah, communication. And just going with that forward, because I don't think that it's something that we can conceptualize just with discussion. We can talk about what we feel, but until we're in the moment, in the situation, I don't think it's something that we're going to be able to put into words, because it's something that is without words.
Since this is basically minus Sarah, the Stars Without Sense crew, I want to mention that like I think in that game, communication about what's important to you, Hoff, as a DM that we think about as players has been really good, and consequences for actions has been really good. Like, you know, when Glornil killed Nadea, like you did not say like, oh, you fucked up now. Like it surely had consequences for us, but it never felt like, wow, you messed with my NPC and now you guys are gonna get it. And I feel like when things like I don't know, food supplies or encumbrance or sleep needs have come up, you've been very clear about communicating, like, you guys should probably start thinking about this, so that we're not constantly being like, do we have enough food? When's the last time we slept? What's the oxygen like in here? Like, I don't know. I think in Stars Without Sense, it's been very, very, very successful.
Yes, I agree. The Stars Without
That's
Sense.
so interesting. I wonder how and
Right?
why.
Because it's like something that people don't think about. It's a very unconscious choice that we all make in every moment. So it's very interesting.
Maybe because there is so little expectation of verisimilitude in Stars Without
Because
Sense.
Oh.
fucking fucked.
That's a really
very
good point.
That's a good point because like
Yeah.
if something
We were
absolutely
attacked by
It's all made up, but the
in
points
first
don't matter.
game.
Exactly.
yeah, exactly because everything is deliberately like wacky and nonsensical. Like there is no
Yeah.
expectation that it's going to make perfect sense.
And so we rely a lot on you to tell us what reality is, and you
Right.
can't really expect us to know, like, well, you guys really should have known this person's very mercurial. You shouldn't have talked to them like that. Like, we don't freaking know. We don't know anything.
Right.
So
Interesting.
Yeah.
Huh.
That's the slogan for the
That's
Stars Without
fascinating.
Sense game.
God.
We don't know anything.
we don't know
That
anything.
is
We don't know
amazing.
anything.
And with regard to like consequences and stuff, like Gornil like attacking Nadea had consequences on everybody, but like in the effect of like
Yeah.
no one could get that candy that would like stop the hit point reduction.
And
But,
we had a
like-
more difficult time going through the water.
That's true, and we had a
she
more
would have been
difficult
able to
time
figure it out
navigating.
for us.
Yeah,
But,
and we
like, that
didn't
was
have
totally
Glornil
fine.
in the dragon
Yeah.
fight.
A lot of but none of it felt like
Yeah,
I
it
was
didn't feel,
never
like,
upset. Like it
punitive
was
or
always
anything, yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I think partly because Sarah knew
right.
Yeah, she
Yeah,
went
and
in and
that's
that
formed
what
Sarah
she's
is
like-
Gornil was
all
doing
for
was a
her
big
character getting fucked
transgression.
over.
Yeah.
And she
Just to say.
specifically said it when she went to do it. She was like, "I know this is going to have repercussions,
I
but
have
I'm choosing,
regrets.
but I'm
She's-
knowingly
Yeah.
choosing to do this."
Yeah.
Yeah, I
And-
think that's a big part of it.
Yeah, I do know as first. I don't know. I'm doing this. We're all out of character right now. For Sarah as a player, as a as a person, like she loves doing fucking weird shit, man. Like no, she said that to me. She loves doing that. She loves making big choices like that. She lives for that stuff. That's part of the fun for her is going for that. She doesn't like it when it affects other people, like with Fitz. But because she said that I believe in our second 0.2 session where when she makes a choice, she's totally fine with whatever the fuck happening to herself. But when it led to like the death of Fitz, that's when she started feeling a little, oh. So like, but outside of that, that's part of Sarah's fun. Is the really big fucking
Affecting the environment is fun.
yeah.
It's fun to know
Yeah.
that what your
Mhm.
character does matters. And I think that's the
Mhm.
hazard of reducing consequences is what we do matters less.
Yeah,
And then in terms of like Sarah's gameplay love, I believe she's actually very close to yours, Lizzie, in what she finds fun in D&D. I know she does like the character, like she doesn't write backstory for her characters usually ever.
Mhm.
If she does, it's usually like a line or two. I know that typically she just does. I know that like for Jake's campaign, she doesn't really have any backstory at all. She has like one line, and then Carol's was just like, "Oh, your son's missing. Cool." Things like that. But she loves combat. She loves the strategy of it
Yeah.
all.
I like backstory in as much as it informs what my character will do today.
Yeah.
But that's pretty, like, that's
Yeah.
the extent
Mhm.
of it.
yeah. That was, and that to be fair, that's what like Renee and I had like a ridiculous amount of discussion about
Ridiculous
Azish and
amount.
Enid before the game and early on in the game.
But that was for
But
one
most
night.
of it, almost all of it was like we had the like one pivotal event that we had
Yeah.
planned in their backstory, but like the
Everything else
majority of
ended up-
all of our like massive discussion was literally like personality quiz type stuff.
Oh yeah,
Just to
we
get
took
an
a
idea of,
lot
like,
of.
We took like I actually still have the Google Docs for like 2 or 3 different like personality quiz things where we both answered them as the characters.
Oh my
Well,
goodness!
that's
Yeah.
awesome.
Here, I want
Just to get
show
an
you
idea of
guys.
like what the character's headspace and like what the character's like decision making process would be.
Yeah, mostly because like we had to interact with each other as ages needed, and we had to build that codependency between the two of them. It was like it was very natural to be codependent after looking into their brains like that. But like this is
Meow meow.
there's multiple little situations like this, but here's one of them. Am I allowed to share my screen? Oh, I
Yeah.
cannot share my screen.
Oh, you can.
No, I
Okay,
can't.
I changed it. I changed it. You can now.
Okay, here it is. Can you see it? So this is a 50 question situation that we got. Okay.
So one highlight color is
Yeah.
one of
This
you. and which one's?
green
I don't
is
remember which
this
one's
one here. They're very hard to see, but the light green ones are Asia's because that's Asia's favorite color, and then the light purple ones are Enid's. So like this one, you see a huge spider in your room. What do? Enid says, I ignore it. I just keep on working whatever I was doing before. Asia says, get rid of it if it's bothering me, otherwise leave it. So they're very similar. And it's very interesting because sometimes we were very similar in our answers. Like this one. Oh, and then sometimes very different. Like this one. Do you think you're attractive?
course.
Enid says, nope. Asia says, of course. Like, and so we have like all of this, like 5 pages worth of this one, and that's not the only one.
And that's
We
like one
also
of
have-
3 at least.
Yeah.
You know,
we
it's-
also have this one
It's funny because,
Here,
like, to
where we
me,
were like with all of our questions. Sorry, continue.
playing the game is just one long personality quiz.
Yeah. Oh,
And I
for sure.
love seeing the way my character and other characters answer. Like, now that I'm watching you guys' answers, I was like, oh, we should all do this and be like, oh, if your character saw a spider. But I was like, wait, no, that's game. That's part of what I love about game is like, if you had one question you could ask the Raven Queen, what would it be? And I don't
Yeah.
know. I really like
Yeah,
that. I think it's part of why I not hate, but get, I find out of character discussions kind of tedious because I don't really care. We all make good rational decisions as players, but
Yeah.
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 I
I
do
like
love
building the
I love
personality
seeing-
beforehand, but then like
Yeah,
having the events change that personality that I had built.
That's exactly what I was about to say. I like having that set, like this is my baseline so that
Where
I
I
know
start.
how to how
Yeah.
that baseline is changed by the events of
Yeah.
the game.
Yeah.
and
oh,
the
like that
interactions
one
with the other
when it
characters.
snowed that morning and the shadow fell, and we all described like how we reacted to it, and I thought that was really cool. Just seeing. I don't know.
Yeah, I like those moments too. I really like those moments. Anytime where we can see the personality grow, I'm in love with.
Mhm.
Oh, that reminds me. I was going to mention it while other people were here, but I have a request, and I'm probably going to need help from more than one person to make this happen. But I would like in the next couple of sessions, to set up a situation where Jir tells the party his real name.
Ooh.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, for sure. We
All
definitely-
for it.
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't know if you picked this up, but talking backstories
I know.
is
just hadn't found a good time to do it yet.
yeah.
I think we should have slumber party night on the
Yes.
on the what's the name of it, the Arion. We'd be like, what's your real name?
Please.
You can make torpedo forts.
Actually, that's a good. I have a story to tell. Quick one.
I actually have to go.
Oh
but
no! Okay.
Have a good night, everybody.
Bye-bye.
I'll see you all tomorrow. Actually.
Yes,
Yeah.
I will.
I can stay for a quick story, Renee.
Yeah, it's just a quick story,
Quick
but it
story.
just like has to do
Let's
with
hear
that, and kind of like when I was talking about my my favorite parts of D&D. One of my favorite parts of D&D just across the board for me one time, and I'm sure Sam can guess.
I know exactly
in,
where this is going.
Yeah. In Jake's campaign, there was one night where we were all bedding down for the evening. His character was casting the tiny hut situation, and the rest of us were sitting in the 10 minutes. And Jake was like, "Okay, you guys got 10 minutes. You can talk about anything while you wait for this." And I was like, "Yeah, I got some questions for you guys." And Sarah's character was like, "I can help," and then cast Zone of Truth on all of us. And then we took like an hour. We all got a question that everyone else had to answer, and then it moved on to the next, and including the asker. And then it went on to the next person. So like, I think the question I asked was like, for example, was like, if you could see anybody in the world, who would it be that you could see right now? And so everyone went around and said it, and they were zoned of truth, unless they passed a save, like Sam's character did. Whatever. You were casting a spell anyway, so it didn't matter. So like that was like nothing happened in that moment. Like that took a considerable amount of time. But that was one of my favorite. That's like, I love thinking about that. It's a part of that session. And I wrote down
Yeah, that was
everyone's
super
answer,
fun.
and I read it all the
Super
time.
fun.
So yeah, quick start, but yes.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, you guys. Thanks for staying late.
Yes,
Yeah,
thank you.
Thanks for playing. That was a
Bye.
good
It was a
session
good
tonight.
game. It was a good fun
Yay.
game.
Later, y'all.